Okay, so I am genuinely annoyed now. I usually do not film these until the day after that I watch the episode, but I'd had enough. I'll get into what I mean in a minute. Okay, so I just got back from watching episode 3 of season 7 of Game of Thrones. I can't even remember what the episode was titled. I'll insert it somewhere. Yeah, so usually I wait until the next day and I have time to think things over and remember everything that happened in the episode and I can sit down and talk about it. But today I just immediately wanted to talk about this as soon as I finished watching it and wanted to get my honest reaction on camera. So I probably got back like 10 minutes ago to my apartment from watching it. I will say, I'm just going to start this off by saying this was my favorite episode this season. I absolutely loved the episode. I thought it was amazing. It's one of my favorite episodes of Game of Thrones ever, and I think the first 2 episodes were kind of mulling out the season, and this was a solid episode. I do apologize if you can hear noise. My roommates are in the kitchen talking and cooking, so that's fine. Just ignore that. I'm not going to start out with what I'm so angry about. I'll get to that later. Okay, I'll try and start with some positives. So we start out on Dragonstone. So from the opening shot of that scene, I knew that I was going to love that scene and that episode. Just seeing the Dothraki on the beach was just an amazing sight to see. To see Jon Snow and Tyrion interacting with each other again was great, especially when they were walking up to Dragonstone. I thought their dialogue was very realistic and things that they would actually say. The dragons flying past, I thought that that looked absolutely amazing, just to see them flying around Dragonstone. It's always great to see people who have never seen dragons before witness them for the first time. I'm not usually someone that thinks Daenerys' title is kind of, I suppose, pretentious and up herself. I know a lot of people criticize her for that. I never do. This time I did. And I think it's because they were playing it up like that, because then the punchline of that was, this is Jon Snow, just after Missandei has announced Dany's title in its entirety. I really enjoyed the back and forth between Dany and Jon. I thought it was very realistic. I was a little bit annoyed that Dany didn't want to address the White Walkers or the Army of the Dead, but the thing is, if we're thinking realistically, why would she? She's been in the East all this time. She's never heard about any of this. She's just met Jon Snow, and why would she think otherwise? At first, I wasn't sure if Tyrion believed it or not. I was a little bit annoyed at him for not explaining it more, but I suppose he wanted to support his queen. I don't know. I really enjoyed that scene. It went on for a while, and it didn't bother me. I was enthralled through all of it. I thought it was a very realistic depiction of what would happen if these characters met, both of them trying to get the other to give them what they want. We got a scene with Melisandre and Varys. I really enjoyed that. I haven't enjoyed a scene with Melisandre in a while. I've never liked Melisandre, but I've liked a lot of her scenes and a lot of what she has said. And what she said, you know, saying, I'm going to die in this country and so are you. Whether that's correct or not, we don't know, but it's a definite, look, here I am, Melisandre is back. We didn't get a reunion with Davos and Melisandre, which I was hoping for, just to see what they would do to each other. We got the stuff in King's Landing. We got to see them cheering on Euron and spitting at the Sand Snakes and Yara, and I thought that was a nice callback to Cersei's Walk of Shame and how quickly the people's alliances can change depending on what they want and the information that they're fed. And Jaime pretty much says the same thing to Euron. I finally think we got a good scene with Ellaria and the Sand Snakes, even though 2 of them weren't there. When Cersei's explaining what she's going to do to them and she poisons Ellaria's daughter, I think definitely shows us what was wrong with the Sand Snakes. It was the dialogue, because they have no dialogue in that scene, and I thought it was beautiful. I was almost crying over characters that I didn't necessarily care about that much, and I thought that their acting in that scene was amazing, and it was because they didn't have any dialogue. And I honestly, I blame the writers for the reason that Dorne sucked, not the actors. And I never really blamed the actors to begin with, but I thought that that scene was amazing. I think it was perfectly done. I still hate Cersei, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, so now getting into the part of the show that really got me angry that you saw at the start of this video. The last 2 episodes, this annoyed me, and you would have seen that in those reviews. But I wasn't genuinely really pissed off. I was really genuinely pissed off today. I was sitting there visibly annoyed watching it. Like, I was sitting there and the people next to me could tell I was annoyed because afterwards my friend went to me, "You weren't happy with that episode, were you?" And I said, "No, I loved the episode. It was one of my favorites ever. I don't know what the fuck they've done to Jamie." And what have you done to him, writers? It makes no sense. So we get a romantic scene with Cersei and Jamie, and it's a very good scene, I'm not going to lie. It's a nice scene, but it makes no sense. Why is Jamie supporting her? Why does he not see a problem with this? He's perfectly fine to go around and keep fucking her and it's all good. The only thing I liked about that scene was the fact that she's like, "I'm queen now. It doesn't matter if people know that, you know, we were sleeping together, and people can now know what they've kind of always known." But I was genuinely annoyed. I was sitting there, like, visibly annoyed, really pissed off, no idea why Jamie still loves her. He shouldn't. He's a better character than what he used to be. He should hate Cersei, and he doesn't. And it doesn't make any sense considering the look he was giving her at the end of the last season. Have you completely ignored that? Apparently. I'm holding back my anger. I don't seem as annoyed as I am because it is very late and I don't want to annoy my roommates by being too loud, particularly because one of them is just opposite that wall. So, moving on. We get the scene at Casterly Rock, and I was very happy because if you know from my last review of Game of Thrones, I was saying we'd never seen Casterly Rock, and I'd always wanted to see it because I thought that it was one of the most interesting castles. And we saw it, and I wasn't sure how it was going to look. I wasn't sure if it was legitimately just going to look like a rock or if it was a castle on top of a rock, because there have been various different variations on how much castle it is and how much rock it is, essentially, in people's artworks and things like that. So I thought it looked nice. It wasn't exactly how I wanted it to look, but it doesn't matter. I think it looked really good. I really loved that scene. I thought it looked amazing. I liked the callback to Tyrion being in charge of the sewers. It was a nice scene with Tyrion narrating over the top what was going to happen, and you're happy because Dany gets a victory, but she doesn't really. And then we get to see Highgarden, and I was very happy about that. Highgarden is the other castle that I always wanted to see, purely because I love House Tyrell. They are, aside from the Targaryens, which we only really have one of them, they are my favorite house, and I always wanted to see Highgarden, and I finally did. And this annoyed me as well. Jamie was there, laying siege or attacking Highgarden. Why? I don't know, because the writers can't be fucked actually continuing his character arc, and they just can't be fucked doing any kind of good writing. So Jamie is there, and they defeat House Tyrell. I loved the scene with him and Olenna. I loved that Olenna was sitting there defeated. She knew she was defeated, and yet she was still poised. She was still Olenna, and I thought Diana Rigg's acting in that was amazing, that she was defeated, and you could see that in her performance, but she was still Olenna. She was sitting there asking, "How am I going to die?" And as soon as Jamie put those glasses of wine down, I immediately thought, is that poisoned? And later on we see him poison it and give Olenna the choice to drink it. I think I was so annoyed that Jamie was there, purely because he's fighting on behalf of Cersei, and I'm still annoyed about that. But he's fighting to get rid of House Tyrell, which Jamie from seasons 1 to 3, I would not have doubted that he would do that. He would fight whoever his father or Cersei or whoever told him to, and that was fine. But he wouldn't do that now. He wouldn't just fight someone that, to be honest, he shouldn't have a problem with the Tyrells. What have they done to him? I mean, the only thing that Olenna has done is kill Joffrey. But Jamie and Cersei don't know that she's done that. They were sitting there talking, and it was like they had a respect for each other. And I liked how Olenna just downed that wine glass when she knew it was poisoned. And then she sat there and she told Jamie that she killed Joffrey. And I'll give this to Nikolai. Great performance. And saying that she wants Cersei to know that it was her, and Cersei can't really do anything now because she's just killed Olenna, but they've done it painlessly. Olenna still won. There was a few callbacks in this episode, as there have been this season, which I'm quite enjoying. I hate nothing more in TV shows, movies, books, when they never talk about past events, like they act like they've never happened. So I'm quite enjoying that this season. And Tyrion says, "Casterly Rock is impregnable, but as a good friend once told me, Give me 10 good men and I'll impregnate the bitch. I loved that. I really want him and Bronn to reunite. Whether it will happen, I don't know, but I loved that callback from season 1. One of the best lines in the show about the Eyrie. We go to the north. Sansa didn't annoy me much this episode. It's more so the writers that are annoying me, purely because we just get this snapshot of her ruling. But the thing is, it's sort of a little quick snapshot of her just saying, they need leather on the armor, we need food for the winter. And that's supposed to tell us that she's doing a good job. I'm sorry, writers, that's not how ruling works. We need her struggling. We need her getting some things right and getting some things wrong. We need her coming into her own. If you want me to like Sansa, that's what you need to do. Because yes, she's gone on a journey. As much as I'm not a massive fan of her, I'll admit she's had great character development, but she's never ruled. She's never had the opportunity to. So maybe she knows how to play people at this point, but she doesn't know how to rule. And we need to see her struggling, and you didn't show us that. You showed us a little snapshot, and that was supposed to say, look how good Sansa's doing. And it was really annoying, to be honest. You know, we have people like Dany and Jon, and you see them when they first start to rule, they're not that great at it, particularly Dany. Rule over Slaver's Bay at first wasn't that successful, but it became successful over time. When they say, my lady at the gate, I was sitting there because I forgot about this. I was sitting there going, I was sitting there like this, like shaking, because I thought it was going to be Arya. Anyway, it turns out it was Bran, which I kind of preferred that. It actually genuinely surprised me, whereas it wouldn't have if it was Arya. So we finally get a reunion. I loved how she just jumped onto the wagon and just hugged him. I thought that was very realistic and made me actually care for them. And you know, he's talking about the three-eyed raven stuff to her, and I'm liking that scene was confusing, because let's be honest, the three-eyed raven stuff is confusing, and it's supposed to confuse Sansa. What else is she supposed to do? I'm looking forward to if Arya gets there and if Jon gets back there. All of the stuff on Dragonstone I loved. I don't think I've talked about all of it, how the scene with just Jon and Tyrion talking was a good scene. The scene with just Jon and Dany talking, where they seem to gather a respect for one another. I liked Dany talking about her dragons. I named them after my brothers. Jorah is cured, which I could complain about how he's miraculously cured in all of this and how convenient that is. But at this point, we've got 2 seasons to go, and I've stopped caring about how miraculously things are happening, because they do need to wrap it up. So he's cured. I'm very happy. I hope he's able to get back to Dany. I just liked it when Sam shook his hand as well, and they gripped each other's hands, and it was really reinforcing, you are cured. Even though the cure for grayscale a lot of people thought was a bit disappointing, which it kind of was. One other quick note, I liked Dany calling Tyrion out on his bullshit. A wise man once said, you wouldn't make your own opinions, a wise man once said. Thank you, Dany, for finally doing that, even though I love Tyrion. And also the likes to talk. We all like what we're good at. I always like it when people take little jabs at Tyrion, as much as I love him being in my top 2 characters ever. But that was just a little side note.